The Healthcare Security Cast is sponsored by 3D Network Technology. 3D Network Technology. Reliability is our core value. Visit www.3dnetworktechnology.com. And by Genetec. Genetec, delivering security strategies for healthcare. Visit www.genetec.com. That's GENETEC.com.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast, the podcast dedicated to healthcare security, safety, and emergency management. If you are involved with a healthcare security program or desire to be, this podcast is for you. Join the conversation as we discuss the issues that matter to healthcare security professionals while leveraging the expertise of healthcare security thought leaders and experts in personal development. And now, here's your host, Brian Hamilton.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast for Wednesday, May the 20th, 2020. On today's show, we're joined by Ralph Cummings. Ralph will be sharing his expertise in the area of body-worn cameras. He is a respected security professional and regular conference speaker. Ralph has extensive experience in both law enforcement and healthcare security. Before we get into today's show, I want to highlight a couple of events. The IAHSS Annual Conference and Exhibition is scheduled for August 17th to 19th in Phoenix, Arizona. Go to iahss.org for more details. On Monday, July the 13th, the IAHSS Ontario chapter is hosting the 16th Annual Golf Classic. This event is happening at the Summit Golf and Country Club, and there are still opportunities to register or sponsor the event. Just a reminder to connect with the Healthcare Security Cast community on social media on our Facebook and LinkedIn group pages. Visit Brian, B-R-I-N-E, Hamilton.com for direct links to those groups. Also, feel free to connect with me directly on social media as well. I'm the only Brian Hamilton on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And now, let's get into today's show. Today we're joined by Ralph Cummings. Ralph, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And I always like to start off by asking about the guest. So we'll start with the question, who is Ralph Cummings?
Well, I'm a retired police officer from the state of South Carolina. I did 12 years in the United States Marine Corps in the reserves and active duty. I'm married to my high school sweetheart, even though we took an unusual route of going from high school sweethearts to being married. Together we have 3 children and 1 grandchild who's 15 months old. We currently live in Martinsville, Virginia, and along with our 2 dogs and a cat. And one of our dogs is a Great Dane, and I'm at home right now, and I hope that we don't hear from her during this broadcast.
That sounds good. All right. Now, moving along into just your career, I know you mentioned the law enforcement piece. How did you get started in this industry, and what led to you being where you are today?
Well, I'd retired from law enforcement, and I retired at an early age due to some personal issues that I felt like I needed to have a normal kind of Monday through Friday type job. So I'd retired and went back to college. And while I was in law enforcement, I've taught for Taser International as a master instructor with them for about 20 years. And one of my students was the security director at what used to be known as Carolina's Healthcare, now known as Atrium Health in Charlotte, North Carolina. And, getting to know this guy, I saw that he was a vast wealth of knowledge and just really kind of brought to light healthcare security in a very interesting way. And so one day I'm at school and I'm between classes and I'm thumbing through my phone and I see that Carolina's Healthcare was hiring for an investigator and a trainer. And so I'd spent a good chunk of my career in police work as an investigator. And then I had been an instructor during the entire time that I was in law enforcement. So I applied and luckily I got hired. And that kind of opened the door to where I'm at now. It really kind of seemed like a natural fit for me to kind of blend what I had learned in law enforcement to what I was now being taught in healthcare security, and kind of how the two had a lot of commonalities, but then there was still a lot of differences between the two. And what I had learned and had the opportunity to be a part of in Charlotte with Atrium led me to moving up the career ladder to becoming a security director and being able to lead my own staff.
Excellent. And you talk about a lot of the similarities between healthcare and law enforcement. Now, I'm just curious. I'm sure you had some people to help you along the way. Who were some of your mentors coming up, and what did you learn from them?
Oh, most definitely Brian Warren. Brian was my student that I had heard him talk on breaks about Carolina's healthcare and what they were doing there, and what a great program and what a great entity all together they were. And Brian did something that I think kind of made things click for me very well. It was my first day after orientation. He was kind of giving a tour of a hospital that we were closest to. So we weren't based in a hospital. We were actually based outside of a hospital because of some of the things we were investigating. Just kind of make it a little bit more on the low end as far as making people comfortable when they came in to talk to us. After my first day, I had like 1,000 questions, and Brian told me before I asked any questions, he gave me a binder and said, read this binder. And in the binder was all the regulatory things such as CMS and EMTALA and HIPAA and all that great stuff the United States has in our hospitals. And he told me to read that. And then after I had read it, then come back and ask me questions. So after I read it, I came back and my thousands questions turned to about 10,000 questions. And Brian explained it to me in such a way that he bridged healthcare security and law enforcement together, which made it very easy for me to understand. And to be honest, it made it very simple on how the job needed to be accomplished. So without question, Brian, a tremendous mentor. I've had the opportunity to work on some big projects with another gentleman named Mike Copland. So Mike and Brian had been working on a project for Taser on a healthcare security training program. They had kind of broached the idea. And then when I came along, they kind of invited me into their little clique. And long story short, Mike and I spent a lot of time together working on the project. And I got to know Mike very well. And Mike is also, he's a great healthcare security leader. And he's just like Brian. He has this very natural knack for making healthcare security easy in the way he presents it and how he brings it along. Is the underlying tone is you're there to help with the care of these patients. And listening to Mike talk, he kind of really sunk in deep with me also. So Mike had a tremendous impact on me in healthcare security. And I don't think a day goes by that there isn't something that one of the two have said that kind of comes to light with how I'm doing my business at my hospital.
Excellent. And yeah, I can attest they're both great guys. And I don't know if it's coincidence or not, or part of you learning from Brian, but the two of you are among my favorite presenters ever. And I sincerely mean that. I love listening to both of you guys do presentations.
Well, thank you.
You're very welcome.
He's awesome.
Now, one of the topics that you're specifically knowledgeable about is body worn cameras. What makes this subject matter so interesting from your perspective?
Well, I think what makes it so interesting is it's a very simple idea. It's a very simple idea to kind of protect not only the officers that wear the body cameras, but those that they're sent out to help serve. And it's very interesting that you take a very simple product and you attach it to an officer's uniform, and it it kind of tells the tale. It doesn't it without editing it can't tell a lie. And it has kind of created this big industry boom within the law enforcement world. And law enforcement, I mean by patrol officers, correctional officers, governmental officers, and healthcare officers. It has really bumped up the technological advancements in that industry. And it all kind of started from a camera that 20-25 years ago, when the original RoboCop movie come out, people thought was kind of crazy that you had something that this officer that had all this technology that he wore. And people thought, wow, that's so far fetched. That's the future. And here we are in the future, and we have all this technology, and it's just it's mind-boggling at how advanced we've come, and how simple it really is, and how it should make the officers and the people they protect lives a lot better.
And it's funny how the things that we look at times as being far-fetched or impossible, how quickly they can come to fruition and be the reality, the new norm.
Yes, yeah.
Now, in terms of healthcare facilities, what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of body-worn cameras?
I think some of the advantages or what we see in other industries that wear them, if they're on or in what some manufacturers call the buffering mode. So it's on, but it's not recording, but you can tap a button on the device and it can back up as far back as 60 seconds and capture that video. So it's allowing officers that have to go hands on with a person. It allows the opportunity to document why they needed to touch that person, what the threat was, what the rationale was, even what was said. And I think that's a huge advantage because that's going to help hospitals save money on liability costs in the event that they're sued, or persons that claiming excessive force, being held against their will, something like that. So there's a lot of really big advantages there. Some of the disadvantages would be the fact that you have officers walking around with these cameras on, and unlike facility cameras, we all aren't really conscious that a hospital has facility cameras mounted everywhere. Some have hundreds, some may have thousands of cameras on their campus. We're not really aware of that as we do our day-to-day activities or if we go in and visit somebody. But if we see somebody in a uniform and we notice that box, centered on their chest or on a pair of eye protection they may have on, that kind of changes things. And I think that can lead to a disadvantage of a patient thinking that maybe there's some type of HIPAA violation going on, or if you have somebody who may be maybe a VIP, a very well-known person in that community, they may think that what's being captured is readily available to the public. So I think that could be a disadvantage.
All right, and you mentioned a couple of things I wanted to kind of focus on as well. So you spoke about HIPAA. Before we go on to HIPAA, you did mention the potential to avoid liability. Do you have any practical examples where you've seen this happen, where the cameras actually saved a hospital from a potential liability issue?
Yes, I consulted with a hospital in probably the Midwest part of the United States where they were being sued for excessive force. An individual was on a psychiatric hold, and when he was trying to leave the hospital, he acted violently. And long story short, when officers arrived, they had to try to control him the best of their ability. His version of what had happened was very much different than what was captured on the body cameras. And the body camera footage showed that the officers acted within their training, they acted within the policy, they acted within the laws of that state, and they also acted within CMS and Joint Commission. So it saved the hospital a lot of money in the long run over the allegations in the lawsuit.
Excellent. And I'll circle back as well to the point that you were making about HIPAA. So are there any HIPAA concerns that exist in relation to body worn cameras? And if so, how does the department navigate those?
So when you look at body cameras, it's a good comparison would be to look at the facility cameras that just about every hospital has. And it's not really what you're recording, it's how you're storing it and where you're storing it and what kind of safety protocols do you have. Are you meeting what HIPAA says you have to meet as far as security protocols, passwords, the fact that it's on your internal network? So those are the main concerns with HIPAA. So if you're storing it on a HIPAA compliant network, and you're following the rest of HIPAA's rules as far as sharing of the protected healthcare information, then you're within HIPAA's bounds, and wearing those cameras and recording are the same as using facility cameras. Where some folks may get a little confused is if it's on the HIPAA side is if it is a outside agency that comes onto your hospital. So let's say it's local law enforcement and they come onto your property because we've called to ask them to come help us. or maybe they're coming to investigate a crime where a victim has ended up in the emergency department, or something like that. When those officers walk in and they have their cameras on, a lot of folks believe that because these officers may go store those videos outside of the hospital's internal network where other patient records are kept, that could be a possible HIPAA violation. But HIPAA says that for it to be a violation, it has to be somebody in the hospital's workforce, and an outside officer, unless he's contracted to work there, would not be considered a member of that workforce. So those are kind of your HIPAA pitfalls. And because HIPAA has kind of gained its own reputation, some good and some bad, some folks have some misconceptions about actually what would be a HIPAA violation. So those are things that you should address if you're going to move towards a body cam deployment to your security staff.
The technology around these body worn cameras obviously has made some significant strides in the last few years. And obviously, when that happens, it tends to impact pricing. That being said, are there any affordable options that will meet the demands for durability and recording time, given the longer shifts typically worked by frontline security staff?
Absolutely. Or when body cams 10 years ago were you had one manufacturer, maybe two, now there are dozens of manufacturers. Some will allow you to utilize their own cloud type storage system. Some will provide you with software that you download either onto an individual PC or onto your internal network for storage of these videos. With the competition has come where it's very common for cameras now to, if they're on record the entire shift, that they can go up to 12 plus hours at a time. And also with the competition, it's caused the price points to come down. So you can find body cameras that are durable, that are very simplistic to use, making it easy for the officers to turn on or turn off depending upon the policy, for a couple $100 a piece. So the price has really come down. Of course, then you can move up the hierarchy, and then there's cameras that maybe $1,000 a piece. It just depends upon what you're looking for. All have good pros and cons. All have longevity with their recording, and most that are on the market now are extremely durable. They've gotten really durable, kind of like cell phones have.
All right, and what has been the impact of implementation of body worn cameras actually in the field?
So in 2012 at Rialto, California, Rialto decided to do a study for a 12-month period of time, and they took 54 of their street officers and they randomly selected those that would and those that would not wear body cameras. And at the end of the 12 months, what they saw was kind of eye opening. They saw that the complaints against officers for maybe some impolite language, to how they handled the situation, to even the response time, they saw those complaints drop by 88%. I mean, 88%, that's absolutely astonishing. And they saw the complaints against officers for excessive use of force drop by 60%. So that's kind of mirrors what we've seen out in the public with all the agencies that use body cameras now. And if you think about it, if you watch the national news, you when you see an incident where there's been a police involved shooting or an incident involving law enforcement, as the viewer, it's almost common that now you think of where's the body cam footage, because it's become so, we're all just so used to it now. But these numbers with Rialto kind of mirror what we saw across the country as body cameras were starting to be ingested across the United States specifically. So it's had a really good impact on not only how officers perform their job, but how citizens can request certain things if the law in their state allows it to request video cam footage. And I think it helps bridge that gap between law enforcement and the community. It kind of makes it a little bit more transparent.
And I guess it encourages everybody, the officers and the citizens, to kind of be on their best behavior as well.
Yes, knowing that you're being videotaped will definitely can kind of change your mind on things. I was part of the crew that when in-car dash cam cameras started to come about, hearing officers talk about how they didn't want to be recorded. But my own personal opinion is why wouldn't I want to be recorded? If I'm doing my job like I'm supposed to, I'm treating the people I'm here to serve like I'm supposed to, why wouldn't I want to be recorded? It kind of takes the he said, she said out of any complaint that may be lodged against me. The camera is going to tell the story. So, yeah,
Yeah, I guess it's just one of those issues where you're going to have to battle perceptions either way.
exactly.
Excellent. Now, aside from their surveillance, what are some of the other uses for this technology?
So besides surveillance, wearing them on the officers' uniforms, in Charlotte, we found that using them for training was a very valuable tool. So we would use it not only for like a facility reactionary drill, such as an active shooter, fire, something like that. We would also use it for individual training. So on the facility side of the house, if we set up a active shooter drill, we would have our good guys and bad guys both wear body cams. And then we would even use cell phones or other stationary cameras and put them around the area where the active shooter drill was going to be, even in like a patient care room. So when we would perform the drill, we'd go back and we'd pull all the video footage and we would look and see if, how did we respond to the active shooter? If we went to shelter in place, when we were shelter in place, did we sit around and look up at the news or see what our friends were doing on Facebook? Or did we do what policy said, where we were planning to fight if that door of the room we're in was breached? If a staff member was inside of a patient care room and they decided to stay and help care with that patient, what did we do while we were in that patient care room? What kind of steps were we taking to ensure everybody's safety? So we use those to go back and to take a look and see if we were meeting our policies, if the policies weren't getting through to staff or they could understand, and then using it as a learning tool for the rest of the employees of the hospital system that didn't have a chance to role play. uh, Brian was, of course, the leader of this group, and we had an opportunity to utilize this kind of philosophy at the Charlotte Douglas Airport on an active shooter drill there. We were the only non governmental agency allowed to participate, and they used our philosophy of filming and allowed us to plan and role play the drill for them. So it's a good tool that can be used to help enhance how a hospital reacts to certain situations. So take right now how our world is with the COVID-19 virus seemingly everywhere. If we had a crossover drill where an active shooter, here in the United States, we've had, I believe it's two incidents since the virus has, since we've been involved in this situation where individuals have wanted to drive essentially a car bomb to a hospital and to blow up the hospital, killing the COVID-19 patients inside. So, if we had an event like that, would we be prepared enough to handle it? And using cameras as we prepare for these kind of drills will show us if the employees are doing what we're supposed to. We use that too on individual training drills, such as in the like a security academy. If we had somebody struggling with defensive tactics, maybe shooting their taser, maybe even firearms, that we would have them wear a body camera, and then the instructors would wear body cameras, and we would videotape how that officer was responding, and when they were given corrections on how to increase their performance, how they adjusted to that. And we found it was enlightening to sit down at the end of the day with that trainee and kind of show them what the instructors were seeing to try to help, kind of put them on the right course and salvage them, since we had already invested some time and effort into them. So I think training is a huge area that most people don't realize that body cameras can be used for.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up because the first time I heard you speak about body cameras, training was something that I hadn't considered at all.
It's it's really, I mean, if you think about it, it's so the two types of body cameras, you have the ones that are mounted on like an outer vest, or some officers will put it on a pocket, that kind of stuff. And then they have some that are mounted on eye protection. And we would use the ones that were mounted on the eye protection. So that way you got the head movement of the individual wearing it. And so that kind of helped you with where they were looking. So if we were doing taser drills and the person wasn't able to, let's say, do a reload on the old fashioned tasers that were only single shot, we could see where their head was. We couldn't see exactly where their eyes were, but we could see where their head was to see if they were even looking at the end of the taser as they should be. So, yeah, it has a lot of uses for that. It's really what you can think about and put it to practical use.
And how are some of the ways that you're seeing body cameras used in healthcare settings now?
In the United States, it's the trend is really growing for officers to start wearing them. We're starting to see some very large healthcare systems start to deploy, starting to get some questions on other large hospital systems wearing them. Overseas, if you go to Great Britain, as odd as it's going to sound, is the medical staff wears body cameras. So medical staff doing their day-to-day duties, whether it be in an emergency department or a patient care floor, they're wearing body cameras so that way they're documenting the care they gave and their interaction with patients. And so I haven't heard of any of those hospitals in North Carolina, North America, doing that yet, but that vision is out there and being utilized, quite commonly over in Britain.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting concept.
Yeah, very.
Now, as far as the healthcare setting is concerned, I guess is it accurate to say that you're seeing a this trending upwards, where you're seeing more hospitals using body worn cameras?
Yes, I think as it becomes almost this a part of the uniform with our local law enforcement. We're used to seeing, the officers that drive up and down the neighborhoods where we live, and come and visit the schools where our children go. As we're starting to see it become this common part of their uniform, it's becoming more and more accepted. And I think as we're able to push this information out to the decision makers and the C suites at these hospital systems, I think the fear of HIPAA, once they get over that and they realize that this is no more concern with HIPAA than our facility cameras that we have up, they're becoming more and more open to that idea. And then once they see that, complaints against officers, maybe comments said after a slip, trip, or fall, that's picked up on their body cam and saves the hospital, money on, maybe paying out because the floor may have been wet or something like that. I think it's really becoming, I think it's becoming a big push for folks to start looking at those.
Now, for the security leader who's interested in body worn cameras and adding them to their program, what recommendations could you offer them?
First, I would recommend getting with their C-suite and other departmental leaders such as HR, risk management, emergency department, and kind of get their thoughts and see what their fears are. I would then list those fears and kind of have myself a running list, and then I would do my research on HIPAA. I would I would go and look at maybe some of the presentations that I've done in the past, maybe presentations that other folks have done in the past, and I would see what kind of information has been put out. I would then research my local laws to see if there's any local law that would prohibit me from, recording in such a manner. Keeping in mind that my facility cameras don't capture sound, but my body camera can catch sound. Most body cameras, you can go in and adjust that. So if you don't want the audio, you can just strictly stick to the video. So I would research HIPAA, I'd research local laws, I would talk to folks in my hospital, get that list, and then I would reach out. I would reach out to people in our industry, see others that have traveled this path, and see what kind of assistance they could be. So through IAHSS, we have a shared interest group on body cameras. We've had a couple of virtual meetings. We've kind of postponed them as our industry kind of adjusts to this new pandemic that we're dealing with. But we've shared a lot of information with folks such as Marty Williams and Eric Clay, who have traveled this path before and have gotten their hospital systems to go with full deployment of body cameras. We've got them to share information, and we've kind of assisted other folks with kind of navigating the waters with, the laws and HIPAA and other regulatory requirements. So that would be my suggestion: is to gather all that information and then answer all the concerns that my hospital had, and then once I could answer all their concerns, then I would start looking at price points of the what's available to me and what I think would be the best fit for my hospital.
Being someone who's been tracking body cameras for quite an extensive amount of time, where do you see this technology going in the future?
I see the technology getting better, kind of similar to cell phones. If we look back to when we all started carrying cell phones in the mid '90s. We went from those big, huge blocks of phone that looked like we were carrying a shoebox to now, now phones that are a few credit cards thick. And now getting smartphones that now fold. So I think technology as we continue with our technology, I think we're going to start seeing body cameras that are smaller, maybe flatter, more durable. We have already started seeing technology attached to a body camera where I have my body camera on, or I'm sorry, I have my body camera on. You're my partner. You turn yours on, and I'm in a close proximity to you. You turning your body camera on will now turn my body camera on. We see other technology where if a firearm is removed from its holster, a taser is removed from its holster, or the lights, the blue and red lights on a police vehicle get turned on, that will turn a body camera on. I think we'll start to see more of that type of technology becoming commonplace. There is some software out there where you have a body camera that is on. I come and interview you because you've called local law enforcement or healthcare security to come and take an incident report from you. That instead of me standing there with a pen and notebook taking down notes of what you're telling me, my body camera absorbs all the information that you tell me, and then based off of the questions and how I phrase them, that body camera can then spit out an instant report with all the blocks completed, the narrative written, date and times, location, all that already filled out. So I think we'll start to see more of that becoming very common. And I think we'll start to see artificial intelligence start to come and have a play in body cameras as well.
Excellent. Yeah, some really interesting concepts, and I wish I would have had that being a frontline security officer, being able to have a technology do my report for me would have really come in handy.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I would have saved a lot of people from correcting my poor spelling, I'm sure.
Now, I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk about some security organizations that you're involved with. So, you're involved with both As Is and IHSS. Would you mind telling us about your experience with these associations?
So with As Is, I'm a member of their investigation council, and I have been for about the last 5 years. We've kind of pushed a lot of good work on trying to educate the security industry on investigations, since everybody involved with the security department, whether it be the newest officer or the director or higher, they all have to deal with doing investigations, whether they're small investigations of maybe somebody's car was hit in a parking lot, to maybe a drug diversion case in a hospital. So we're out trying to push that information out and to help educate everybody in the industry on investigations, and to try to make sure everybody understands that that's a vital part of what we do, because it kind of gives our C suites return on investment on having us. And the more money we can save them, and the more professional we can show our clients, as far as as a security department, more professional we can come across and help them with lawsuits, maybe some disciplinary issues with other employees, the better we're going to look. So being involved with them in this ASIS as a whole, there's a tremendous wealth of knowledge there. A lot of really really good security leaders involved with that organization. And I've learned a lot just from being around some of these folks. With IAHSS, I'm involved with the Education Council. It's uh, it's the same thing. The council is full of individuals whose knowledge is just it's off the chart. And every meeting we have, whether it be in person or on the phone, I learn from these people because of their knowledge and how easy they make it look. Everything from how to break down the annual seminar and events to just how they handle their business back at their home base. It's absolutely incredible. And IAHSS as a whole just has a wealth of healthcare security leaders that it's a it's a team. It's a team effort. Everybody is so willingly available to help their brother or sister in healthcare security that it's a tremendous organization. And I look forward to going to both organizations' annual conferences. Even if I'm not speaking myself, I get more out of it of sitting down and listening to what these experts have to say and to educate myself on them. So I would recommend both organizations to anybody coming into the industry, or if they're already in the industry and they haven't got themselves attached to either one of these organizations, I would, because there is a wealth of knowledge and there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. There's plenty of folks that would be willing to help.
I can agree with you 100% in all of that, especially just the value that you have from membership. Speaking with Lisa Terry and Tony York recently, both of them kind of echoed the same sentiment. No matter how much you put in, you're always getting more out of being a member and being involved.
It's so true. It's so, where with IAHSS, there's not a lot of industries out there where, like with Tony, the guy that actually literally wrote the book on healthcare security, that we use to study for a lot of, designation tests, that he could be in the same educational session with you and just answer whatever question you have and just be a resource for you. And I think that kind of says a lot about the men and women that work in healthcare security, of how how willing they are to help each other.
It's a really cool thing, and it's funny. You actually just reminded me of a story, which I'm just going to share really quickly. But I think of myself as a little bit of a healthcare security nerd. I remember being at my first eight.
I'm sorry.
It's all good. No, that's generally the reaction I get. But I remember being at my first AC&E, and at that time I had went through all of the progressive certifications, so the CHSO, the CAHSO, and the CHSS. So I knew a lot of these folks by name just from their contributions to those materials. So for me, it was actually really cool to get to meet those people. And conversely, I had done event security as a part-time job when I was kind of making my way in my career. And I remember doing the Toronto International Film Festival, and every time somebody mentioned a celebrity, I had to Google them, because I'm not someone who really spends a lot of time watching watching movies or TV. So, but it
Yeah.
but it's just funny. I'm kind of the opposite of a lot of people, where I had to look up a celebrity, but when I ran into a Lisa Terry or a Brian Warren, I already knew who they were.
And both just willing and able to just listen to what questions you have. It's I tell you, all those people have made my life a whole lot easier.
Oh, 100%. Now, is there anything that you'd like to mention that I haven't asked you about to this point?
Well, I'd like to just mention how appreciative I am that you're doing these podcasts. I've learned a lot from listening to them, and I just want to thank you as a member of your industry, of helping put this information out that we can all learn from, and getting to know these rock stars, if you will, that you've mentioned. Getting to know these folks a little bit better, and kind of listening to how you pick their brain a little bit, so we can all benefit from their knowledge. So I just want to thank you for that.
Well, thanks, Ralph. I appreciate that. That means a lot. Again, coming from somebody who I've looked up to and learned a lot from as well.
No, thank you.
Now, just in closing, I know I met you in person at an ACNE, and we connected from there on LinkedIn. What's the best way for someone to connect with you?
LinkedIn is a good place. Or if they're an old fashioned, just like to email, they can email me. My personal email account is, and please don't laugh at this, it's Taser, Taser trainer, Taser trainer, all one word, at gmail.com. And anybody who listens to this has any questions, anything I can be a resource for, please reach out. I'd be more than happy to assist any way I can.
Thank you again for taking the time, Ralph. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to share some information and help us all engage in the learning process.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on. It's been a pleasure.
And this concludes another episode of the Healthcare Security Cast. Thank you for listening. I want to encourage everyone to connect with us on social media. And the best way to do that is by leveraging the website. That's Brine, BRINE, Hamilton.com. For next week, we have a few surprises, so stay tuned to social media for more updates. But on our next episode, our guest will be Jonathan Westall. Until then, take care and stay safe.